Sudha Umashanker, please tell us about your work and please tell us a story.
Thank you very much, Eric. Friends, I'm a journalist and a social activist. I happened to meet Dr. Eric Miller when I invited him on behalf of the Rotary to make a presentation on his Kannagi Trail. And that's when I first met him. And then I came to know that he was running these workshops on storytelling. So I signed up. And so that is another dimension I've added to my profile after meeting Dr. Eric. So today I'm going to share with you the story about the man who single-handedly built a forest on the sandbar of the Brahmaputra. Now, Jadav Molai Payne was a tree planter, and he loved trees as much as he would, or even more than his own children. He was a true son of the soil. One day when he was all of 16, Jadav was walking along the banks of the Brahmaputra. This is a river in the eastern part of India. And he came upon this huge expanse, this barren expanse. And it was a hot and dry day. And what caught Jadav's attention was the sand. Apart from being powdery, it also seemed striped. So it got him very curious. So he knelt down to take a closer look and to see what these stripes were all about. And he discovered that the stripes were not stripes, but in fact, they were snakes. And these were snakes that were lying still and lifeless. They were not slithering and slinking around or hissing. Now, Jadav being, as I told you, a true son of the soil, loved trees, he loved animals, he loved reptiles, and it broke his heart to see the sight. If only there were trees in this place, there would have been shade for these snakes, and they wouldn't have had to die, he felt. And he covered his face with his hands and wept silently. And then he thought there's no point in weeping and not doing anything. So he decided that he was going to do something about the situation. So he ran all the way to the forest department. And there, gasping and panting, he told the officer, "Snakes, snakes," pointing to the direction from where he came. And the officer was very curt and snapped at him. He said, "Snakes? What snakes are you talking about?" And then Jadav tried to explain to him what he saw. And the officer said, "Well, what do you expect? They must have got washed ashore in the floods that happened recently. And there's nothing we can do. So, just get on with it." But Jadav pleaded, "Can't you do something? Can't you plant some trees?" And the officer said, "Nothing will grow in that place. If you are so keen, go and plant some bamboo yourself." So Jadav knew that he had hit a wall. He was disappointed, but he was also very determined. And so he walked back with a firm resolve in his heart. He made a quick dash to his village. And then he called out to his friends, "Ramu, Raju, come here, find me all the bamboo shoots that you can. I'm on a mission. I need to plant all of these." So Ramu and Raju went about their task enthusiastically, and the three of them collected 3 bags full of bamboo shoots. And Jadav set off for the sandbar again. He was very hopeful this time. He said, "Nothing will grow in this place. but bamboo will, and bamboo is strong. So he went about planting the shoots one by one by one, and he tended to them very lovingly. He watered them, but there were a lot of challenges. Sometimes the river would be swollen, sometimes it would be dry, sometimes it would bring with it a lot of sand, and sometimes it would take away a lot of sand. There would be floods, there would be rain, but Jadhav continued. He planted and planted and planted. And then one day, he saw the first signs of life with the bamboo shoots beginning to take root. He was overjoyed. Hey, Bhagwan, he said. And he knew that his efforts would not be in vain. And as the bamboo grew and became a thicket, it brought with it a lot of shade. The shade brought with it insects, and the insects began burrowing themselves into the sand. And that white, powdery soil turned a nice, healthy brown. Jadhav knew now what he had to do next. So he made another trip to his village. And this time he brought back a lot of red ants with the soil from there. As he carried the bag with red ants, he got bitten and stung by the ants. So he was slapping and flicking them and, trying to sort of not be too bothered. But anyway, he was on a mission. So he didn't mind all of these, little difficulties. So once he reached the sandbar, he released all the ants into that soil, and soon the ants and the insects began doing their part and started enriching the soil. Jadhav knew it was time for another trip to the village, and this time he brought back a lot of saplings: Arjun, Gulmohar, Himolu, Moj, a lot of these indigenous trees, because he knew that it was the indigenous trees which would grow and survive in that place. So he brought back all these little saplings and he planted them one by one by one. It was back-breaking work, and he watered them and tended to them carefully. Soon, these little saplings took root. They scattered seeds. The seeds took root. They became trunks, and the trunks grew branches and leaves. And then there was a beautiful canopy and almost touching the sky. It was an oasis of green that he created there. And then he had the visitors, the winged visitors who flocked in from far and near. There were pelicans, vultures, storks, and thrushes, warblers, wagtails, you name it. And they made the place delightful with their chirping and tweeting, and it was joyful to just listen to them. And following them came the animals, the elephants, the tigers, the one-horned rhinos, the deer, the rabbits, the gibbon, you name it, and they were all there in his forest. And following this was the biggest surprise, maybe not for Jadhav, but for people like us. And there came the snakes. The snakes this time were slithering and slinking and swaying and hissing. Jadhav wasn't scared of being bitten at all, but he was delighted because for him, life had come full circle. It all started with the snakes, and now to see these snakes full of life was like the ultimate. He was absolutely, he knew his efforts had paid off. He was very, very gratified. Life might have seemed perfect. But then one day when Jadhav was, busy at work, his wife called out to him Jadu, she said, where is Lakshmi, our cow, and all the other cows? So on hearing this, Jadav took to his heels and ran, and he looked everywhere, and he couldn't find the cow, no matter how high and low he searched. It must be those poachers, he said. They must have come for our animals. And Rani began crying. She said, oh, what we do about milk? Because they used to sell the milk and make 2 ends meet. Don't worry, Rani, he said. We will manage somehow. After this incident, a herd of 100 elephants came into the forest after, creating havoc in the village nearby. They destroyed a lot of hutments in the nearby villages, and they came into this forest. And then the forest department got wind of it, and they arrived on the scene. And they were amazed because they hadn't expected to see such a large and expansive forest in that place. The villagers were all angry because they wanted the forest to be cut down and the hutments to be built in that location. But Jadav stood his ground. He protected his trees, defended them, and he had his way. Meanwhile, a lot of changes had happened in the area. There was development happening. There was dust everywhere, and there was a smoke from the industries. But in this oasis, Jadav had plenty of shade, and all the insect friends were helping him with his great mission. And then one day, after news about the elephants and the forest department coming in, there were a lot of visitors from overseas, everybody wanting to know how Jadav managed to do this. And one day, as all the villagers were huddled around the radio, a newscaster broke the news. This is All India Radio. The Padma Awards, India's highest civilian awards, were announced today. And among the awardees is Jadav Molai Paying for his outstanding work in the field of the environment. Soon all the villagers clapped and danced and broke into song, and Jadav had become a hero. He was a forest man of India. He was a man who single-handedly transformed the sandbar of the Brahmaputra. But Jadav was unmoved. All this, high praise did not touch him. He still continues to plant and plant and plant. And his message is for anyone listening to this story, please do the same, and please continue planting more and more trees. I'm really very happy to be able to share this story with you. And just to add a face to this name, here's a picture of Jadav. He's from the missing tribe in Assam, and this is his daughter, Munmun. He now lives in the sandbar with his wife and 3 children, who also share his passion and help in his task. And if we had more people, more heroes like Jadav Molai Paying, and by the way, how he got the name, how the forest came to be known as Molai is interesting. Jadav explains that Mola means a pink radish. And it seems when he was a baby, his cheeks were pink. But now with his constant work in the sandbar, he sort of has all the grime on his face. So because he had this nickname, Mola, the forest came to be known as the Molai Forest. And it's in Jorhat, about roughly about 350 kilometers from Guwahati in the eastern part of India. Thank you very much, Eric, for this opportunity to share this environment story.
Thank you. And I want to congratulate you for telling it in such dramatic form. You know, at the beginning of the story, when the man saw those snakes and they were dried out, and we could understand, even if we don't like snakes, we could understand his pain, his sorrow at the dehydration. And then when he heard, oh, if there were trees, those snakes would have survived. We understood his motivation. So you really gave a dramatic shape and form to the story through, you know, to us being able to see the situation from his point of view. So good, great work. My one suggestion is, you mentioned at one point that a group of elephants came through and did some damage.
Yes.
A little bit after that, you mentioned that nearby there was some development, some smoke.
Yes.
I don't know if it's true, but for the sake of dramatic unity, it may be that the elephants were stampeding, or they were running because of that smoke and development. Because usually elephants won't do that kind of destructive behavior unless they're pushed to it.
They were wild elephants, and you're right, Eric, because the animals had been dislocated from their homes, which is a forest.
Okay, so good.
Yeah.
So please do mention that
Yes.
they were not just being destructive of their own will. It was
Yes.
because of the nearby displacement.
Yes. Jadhav, in fact, I believe, asked the elders in the village once he saw the snakes dying, why this was so. And they told him that it's precisely because of all the development and the forests being cut down, that the animals are rendered homeless, and that has a spin-off effect.
If I may, Sudha,
Yes,
I love the story. It resonated a lot with me because, like you, I mean, like Jadhav, I'm an environmentalist too, and I love all animals, snakes also including, because I see snakes sometimes in my garden, and I always tell my maid and my gardener, please don't harm them. They'll come and they will go. And so for me, the visualization of those snakes lying dead was really painful, you know. And I'm so happy that you brought out a story. I've read about it in the paper. But it was fantastic the way you brought it out so beautifully in the story. And like Eric said, you started off so dramatically saying that seeing those lifeless forms of snakes, that really brought the story alive for me, because immediately I got connected. So I really, really enjoyed your story. Thank you very much, Sudha.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else want to say anything, or shall we move on to the workshop? I guess we'll continue. Okay, Sudha, thank you and congratulations again.
My pleasure, Eric, and thank you for the opportunity.